It's a new twist on an old faithful, and it wants to go fast. Good afternoon and welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech. If you're new here, I'm Reese of the 4-piece variety of Wooks Triple XL, and we have the K70 RGB TKL Championship Series. Quite a mouthful, but it's got two new additions to a really good stand platform that they haven't really had to update for like 10 years, basically. I don't know when these first came in, but they used to be called K65, and I had one for quite a while until my keycaps decided to die, and then one of the switches broke eventually, and then that was the end of the keyboard. But the flat aluminum deck has been with us for the longest time with the media keys, and there's a couple added little bits and pieces here and there. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's go through what's in the box. So you obviously get a keyboard, you get a couple manuals, you then get a very nice braided Corsair cable, and then a couple of spare textured keys, as well as a key remover. And the textured keys are quite nice, not just for the fact that they'll be easier to find and that they still have their shine through. It's the fact that they have slopes on them so that you can actually get like an angled feel on those keys. And then you always have a spare set as well for when these double shot PVTs do eventually wear out, then you will have a spare set and you don't have to throw the keyboard away. The keyboard itself, like I said, it's old faithful. On the top right hand side, you've got a set of media keys for stop, pause and play, skip back and forward. On the top left hand side, you've then got your user profiling button next to your brightness, next to your win lock, which can be set up to disable a couple of things, not just the Windows key itself. Then you've got the mute button next to it and the ever good scroll. The scroll on this is still 12 out of 10. It's still one of the best that you're ever going to feel and find on a keyboard, and it's something Corsair was one of the first to implement, and they just continuously knock out of the park. Looking around the bottom of the keyboard, you're going to notice an incredible amount of rubberizing, even on the kickstands themselves, which is exactly what we hope to see, so that the keyboard isn't going to run around on your tabletop, and it gives it actually quite a nice spongy type of effect. The keycaps and the font themselves are exactly what we expect, with the north-facing LED giving some of the best shine through I've ever seen. I didn't even feel like I needed to switch off the lights and give it special lighting and stuff on my camera. You can see how bright this thing is, even with like a couple 100 watts worth of lighting on it. It still has shine through, so it's quite potent. And actually, when I removed the keycaps, I actually needed to turn off the keyboard because it was overwhelming the sensor on my camera, which really doesn't happen often. So yeah, these are particularly strong. The Cherry MX Reds are such a welcome return. I kind of miss them. The KL Reds that I've got, they're very linear. The force is basically exactly the same from top to bottom, but the Cherries give you just this little bit of like a spongy effect. Like right at the end, they tend to get just a little bit firmer, and it creates this like really nice feel from the keyboard. Anyway, I suppose right there is where we jump into a little audio test. As you can see from that, stabilizers aren't too bad. The shift on this side and the spacebar do need a little bit of lubrication and attention, but otherwise it sounds pretty damn good as well. It feels fantastic. Like I said, the Cherries, the current Cherry MX Reds, the way that they feel, like I said, it gives it kind of spongy, almost kind of feedback, and I particularly do find it quite nice. But now we get to like the little bit of extras. So we'll start off with the tournament mode and why this is a Champion Series product. It's because around the back, there is a little switch assembly, which is extremely overkill. I mean, they could have just made it a switch, but it's got a lock-in point as well. And when you fully engage that, then it disables all of the macros on the keyboard, just turns the backlighting red, and then you have just a default tournament layout. So you've effectively got a dual BIOS or a dual firmware available on this keyboard for when you are at tournaments. And then the secondary part of that is you have the 8,000 hertz polling rate available to you from the software side. So you can set that, I think, onto the hardware and save it as the default profile. That gives you a 0.25 millisecond input delay reduction, or reduces the input delay to 0.25 milliseconds. So if you had to relate that back to a top like tier pros reaction time, which is generally in the region of like 150 ms to 180 ms, that's going to add less than 0.8 or 0.25%, not even, it's an eighth of a percent. So yeah, an incredibly low amount of input delay is going to be added, or subtracted in this case, from the keyboard itself. So it really has been made with that in mind. The flat aluminum deck is always a good thing. They have reduced the thickness, which is going to reduce the overall weight of the keyboard, but it's still a big piece of single milled aluminum. And because of that, it's still going to work quite well for home defense. If someone wants to break in and you clap them in the face with this, they're going to feel quite just. The software is typically IQ once again. It's got all of the default functions, and you can do macros and other sorts of things to the keys, and a little bit easier with the lighting profiles as well. And the fact you can then save that as a hardware layer stuff onto the keyboard, and there's I think 2 different layers for that, means that you can have those macros as an option for when you go to the event. But if they aren't working, then you can just change onto that secondary firmware and carry on. So what do I think about this in general? I still love it. I still think it's one of the best designs, and it's why I chose the K70 full size as the best kind of default full size that you can still buy to the day. They've improved the keycaps once again into this generation, which was a bit of a problem in the previous ones. They did used to wear out quite quickly, but now they double shot PBTs. It's probably going to last a pretty good amount of time. They're going to get some shine and stuff on them as time goes by, but they really should kind of outlast even the switches, which in general do last exceptionally long. My MK730 is probably about 5 years old now, and it's still going absolutely no problems with the Cherry MX Reds and that as well. So we know Cherries can last an exceptionally long amount of time, and now the keycap set is in line with that. That's what we like to see. What would I like to see them change though? At this price point, they do find themselves up against a lot of modular options, and I would really like to see this platform with its flat aluminum jack in a modular type option. It's going to be a lot more machining to get the switches removable on that sort of profile is kind of the challenge that I see for them. But if we had all of this feature set with this Axon Tech hyper polling rate and the little dual firmware BIOS type setup, all in the keyboard like that, and then it's modular, there we go. If it had all of that plus modular, I think you agree it's going to be absolutely fantastic. This is still good though. If you like Corsair, the K70 is still just a really good default. The updates and stuff like the rubberizing and, you know, the added in function modes and the 8,000 hertz polling rate, it's all welcome updates. They're still killing it. It's got some of the best backlighting you're going to see. If you are, let's say, challenged where it comes to light spectrum and you need something extremely bright, this is the one. This is like a searchlight that has some keycaps over the top of it. Anywho, that is all I have for you on the K70 RGB TKL Championship Series. If you have enjoyed this review, please do hit us up with a like and subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side.